All right, everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Athletes Hub. This is our weekly football roundup, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Flexx.
Yes, guys, how are we doing?
Yeah. Yes, how you doing, Flexx? It's been a while since we jumped on a podcast together, to be fair.
It has been, but guess what? I'm very glad to be back, very excited to be back. There's a lot that's been happening, so let's delve into it. Let's jump in there.
That's it. As Flexx said, there's a lot's been happening, guys. It's been a busy summer of football activity, and as you can see, we've got a couple of topics we're going to touch upon today. I think, the first one we want to kind of get into is a story that kind of broke last week, a major story in the football world, and that's, both of us being Ghanaian. It involves our Ghanaian brother, Mr. Thomas Partey, and I'm sure for those who know, he's been accused of some very serious allegations. There's been accusations of, sexual misconduct, sexual assault, 5 counts of sexual assault, and 1 count of I think is it rape? I think there's another count of rape, if I'm not correct.
That's right. There was a count of rape on it. Yeah.
On there as well, with multiple women. There's 3 women involved. But the interesting thing is, Flexx, this came up last week, and he's been charged last week. However, these allegations kind of surfaced in the summer of 2021 and 2022. And It's weird because at the time, I remember there were sort of rumors online. When you hear this social media speculation of somebody, sort of these situations happening, but there was nothing formal came out. There was no formal announcement by the club or by the Met Police. But it's like everybody knew who the culprit was, and his name was circulating around on Twitter, and there were screenshots of conversations with him and said victims, and nothing really came out formally about it. But everywhere he went that season, he was abused by opposition fans, calling him, a rapist and stuff like that. But it's only sort of in 2025 now that we've seen these allegations again really resurface, and now he's actually been formally charged by the authorities. What do you make of the whole situation? Again, it's not nice to hear. We don't want to hear somebody who comes from Ghana being in this situation. But what have you made of the whole sort of scandal so far?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's obviously not a good thing to be associated with. How does one even find themselves in these type of scenarios? You would think that you have everything at your disposal to maybe not want or have the need or feelings to do these type of things, so it's very, very weird, very strange. I like we said, we heard it early on, and we thought, what, maybe these are one of those things where it's allegations, speculation, people saying things, but it may or may not have actually happened. And unfortunately, this time round, it's come down that he's actually been charged with these things. So that means that there is a very high likelihood that these things have happened. Now, being charged, is not being convicted, so they're 2 different things. So we're going to have to see how all of this stuff plays out, and then we kind of see where it goes. And if you remember a few years ago, we've had the same situation with Benjamin Mendy as well. And he was actually in prison for maybe just over a year, maybe a bit longer. And eventually you come to find that quite a lot of it wasn't actually true, So it's a very sensitive subject, it's a subject that, you wouldn't, I don't think anyone would want to be associated with, so it's good that it's come to light so it can be addressed and resolved. Now, what's interesting as well is a lot of people have been speaking is the role the football club Arsenal have had to play in all of this. So I wanted to just get your thoughts on, if you could maybe think as a club manager, club owner, and you've heard that one of your players has got this level of misconduct against their name. I mean, what do you think happens,
Well, it's a tricky one because, listen, I think Arsenal Football Club, again, they've not commented on the situation. They've been asked to comment, but they said because it's in court, it's criminal proceedings, they can't really formally make an announcement at this stage. But if you're asking me from a club's perspective, how would I feel? What would I do? It's tricky because, first of all, they've got an asset there. They've got, as an employer, they've got a duty to care for the employee. However, these allegations that have come out are really serious allegations. And you've got to think of it from a perspective of, if this happened in our regular day-to-day society, that person would, in a normal job, say the jobs that we do day-to-day, if we were accused of such a crime, we've got women who work in the workplace, we would immediately, be suspended, under investigation, So it was surprising because, again, these allegations go back to 2021 and 2022. So they've not just popped up. I'm guessing they're aware of it. He's played for 2 full seasons. He's played football for 2 seasons at the football club, and they're aware of the allegations. But I don't really think there's an excuse, to be honest, because if we compare it back to clubs like you've mentioned, Benjamin Mendy at Manchester City, Mason Greenwood at Man United, and also somebody who people don't talk about, Gylfi Sigurdsson at Everton.
That's gone well under the radar because
his case was quiet because he wasn't formally named in the press as the offender. So Everton suspended him quietly, and he didn't appear for the club again. And I don't know what he's doing now. But I think clubs have a responsibility to act swiftly when these cases when they get brought to light. Arsenal, in my view, don't look very good because, again, we've given examples about Man United, Manchester City, Everton, even Sunderland with Adam Johnson and his situation. He served prison time, and clubs have acted swiftly because these are serious allegations. So I don't know the reasons why, and I don't think there's an excuse as to why Arsenal would keep this under wraps. I don't see what benefit it offers them or the football player. I think as a football club, your reputation is tarnished because it comes across like, forget about him being a footballer, forget about him being a powerful person or a role model, if you like. He's been accused of serious allegations. Again, in society, if you have somebody going out doing what he's been accused of doing, we wouldn't want that person on the street. We wouldn't want him in the workplace. We wouldn't want them associated with that. So we, as an employer, you have to kind of make a tricky decision. Again, you have to, if he's being charged at the time, again, he wasn't formal, didn't come out, but I expected the club to kind of, I guess, make a decision because I don't think there's an excuse for kind of keeping this on the wraps, to be honest. Again, they've not given the reasons why he was there for playing all this football, but it's a very difficult one to kind of analyze. If I'm honest,
it is. And
what's your view?
I'd even want to just quickly touch on the legal troubles that come with all of this stuff, and that's why clubs tend to act incredibly fast, because they want to quickly, dissociate themselves, from the player, and now just become solely the player's responsibility to legally deal with the situation they found themselves in, and this might be part of the reason as to why Arsenal didn't, kind of proceed with the, contract renewal, because remember there was talks that he was supposed to renew a contract, etc., etc. This has now all of a sudden come off the back of all of that. So did Arsenal know anything about that maybe in the background? It's a very powerful club with powerful people working at the club, all of these things. It's definitely tricky. It's a hard one to navigate. If it's not true, what I would like to say is that, that's incredibly, hard. Well, I wouldn't call it hard luck, but it's not fair. It's not right that these things, all of a sudden come in, tarnish your name, tarnish your career, because even if people later on, because let me just put it this way, when it comes out, everyone remembers that you had 5 charges of misconduct against women. But when it goes away and it's not true, we don't hear that in the same way we heard the 5 charges. So it kind of sticks with you like a bad smell, and so that will affect his future employment as a footballer. That would affect his standing, amongst fans, because it's not just Arsenal fans, it's fans across the globe. Once you're seen as this type of character, I don't think anyone in the footballing world really wants to associate themselves with you. And this is why Benjamin Mendy has found it difficult to re-enter into football. He's gone to one club, he's been there 6 months or whatever, and then he's been moved on, because it's just a stain that kind of stays on you. But it's a tricky one, let's just hope that the truth, eventually comes out. And, if it's true that he has done these things, then, whatever the courts decide. But then if it's not true, then, I don't know how you repair your reputation after that, because the only reason why these allegations come out or these charges come out in the first place is because guess what? You actually did something. Something must have happened, right? And this is not just a guy who is a single guy and doesn't have a family. He's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got all of these things. So I don't know how you find yourself in this situation. It's crazy.
Yes, it's like I always think about it as well. I always look at it from a perspective of I always take the footballer out of the equation. These are serious allegations. again, if we saw this in the street, or we saw this in our society, we wouldn't stand for it. Again, I agree with you. If it was, again, this still in court, we're not sure what the outcome's going to be right now. But if he was to be found not guilty, I agree. You know, as a footballer, how do you really come back from this situation? Your name's tarnished, and you got to remember as well, football and society is unforgiving. You know, when you're tagged with a label, you know, it's very difficult to come out, you know, and kind of repair your reputation. But I agree with you. It's like if you've been accused of all these crimes and you've got all these counts of, you know, assault against your name, there's got to be some sort of situation where you've put yourself in that situation to be, I guess, to be accused in the first place.
Yeah,
So we've got to look
absolutely.
at that situation because we see footballers like Harry Kane. He is never accused of this stuff. You know, Sadio Mane is never accused of things like this. Do you know what I mean? So we have to look at it from the perspective of footballers have a massive responsibility to behave the right way. And I don't feel like, I think sometimes there's a mentality that because you're a footballer and you're powerful, you've got money, you can't be touched. And we've seen these type of situations not just in sport, but recently in the showbiz world with the likes of P Diddy and other celebrities who've gone on the trial for being accused of crimes as well. And there's always a sense of, you know, you feel like you're untouchable, you can't be accused of anything, or you can't be charged with anything. And I think we've got to be careful because, again, I'm taking a footballer out of this situation. This is a serious allegation here. So if he's found guilty, he should face the consequences. If he's not found guilty, I believe he deserves a chance to come back, repair his name, and get his career back on track. But I do feel like it will be difficult because, again, we live in a society which is very unforgiving. Football's unforgiving. When you're tagged with something, it's difficult to come back.
It's difficult to shake it off. It is difficult, but
Very,
you know what? That's it. That's it for Partey. You know what I mean? That's it.
yeah.
No parties for Partey.
Maybe listen. Maybe it's not it. Maybe again, he's gone to court. He's going to fight to clear his name. He's denied all the allegations, and we can't really discuss the ins and outs of it. All we can discuss is what's been shared in the media and what we've seen online and stuff like that. But listen, we hope for his sake that it's not true and he can get his career back on track. And I'm sure in a couple of weeks' time we'll find out a bit more about what the future lies for Thomas Partey.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, listen. Onto football matters, stuff on the pitch, Club World Cup. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the Club World Cup this summer. Do you know what? I've not really watched a lot of games, if I'm honest with you, and I want to get your thoughts because this is a competition that's, I guess, received a lot of controversy because people have said that's a waste of time. It's not necessary why the players taking part in this. Like, firstly, have you been watching the Club World Cup, and what are your thoughts on the competition?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a waste of time? Do you think it's good? Or?
No, definitely not a waste of time. Definitely not a waste of time. And I have been keeping up with it because guess what? My club's in it. Big up the Chelsea.
Also, yeah, at the time of recording, guys, Chelsea are going to be playing PSG in the final as well. So that'd be interesting to see.
That's it.
How that goes.
That's it. You know, so for me, I think we've got to look at it like in the long-term perspective, right? This type of competition. I think it will eventually hold the prestige that the World Cup holds, the Champions League, what it holds as well. Because effectively what we're saying is that this is the World Cup of the club teams, right? And which then makes it probably the second biggest competition in football. You know, so this is a competition that should probably drive clubs within Europe and then, you know, around the world to want to win their versions of the Champions League, you know, to qualify for the Club World Cup. And then we have a massive tournament, 32 teams, and we figure out who is the number one team in the world, you know, and that's what makes it exciting, you know, like anything else. It will have teething problems, which it's had, because I don't think playing in America has been the best place to have played it. The pitches are not the best because they're synthetic, you know, with the 4G. That's not been the best. The weather has been very adverse as well, so that's not been great. And there hasn't been such a massive turnout because as much as American fans, you know, love sports and everything, soccer is still a developing sport in the country, you know, so it's not something that I think that they have the stomach to, you know, kind of stomach the whole competition, you know, especially when their teams fall out of it because they are not the strongest. So I think wherever it'll be played next, you know, it should be probably hosted in a nation that's more familiar with football and, you know, have a strong fan base that just loved to watch football. Like, you know, where would have been a great place to have hosted this? Brazil would have been
Yeah.
fantastic. They would have shown out for every single game, and then stadiums would be at max capacity. That would have been absolutely awesome. But if you ask me, like you're saying, how have I found the competition? I think it's been great. It's good to see the Brazilian teams in there, you know, challenging and, you know, matching up very well against the European teams. It's good to see, you know, PSG just, you know, their dominance just, you know, being very consistent, you know, from where they picked up off from winning the Champions League. So I think great competition. I personally don't think it should be every 4 years. I think it should be every 2 years. But, you know, every 4 years, I don't mind. You know.
I mean, my one thing is that I know you mentioned how it's a Club World Cup and it's you know, it's got to be exciting. It features all the best clubs in the world currently. But why is it not received that way then? Because you mentioned America not being a great location, but surely if FIFA are going to organize a tournament, they would know the concerns that you've actually brought up. The fact that it's in America, it's not
you know what it is? It's down to money, you know, and you know Donald Trump is gonna put a lot of money. This is an advert. Remember, this is a prelude to the World Cup that's going to be guess where? In the Americas. Do you see what I mean? So that's why it's gone there to kind of pave the way for the World Cup. You know, so this is like it's a user acceptance test. Do you get what I mean?
Then again, like, America's always been home for pre-season games. Is this a pre-season tournament? Because I mean, America traditionally
it can't be a pre-season tournament because the season just finished and they went straight into it. You know, so it's not a pre-season.
For me as a fan. My biggest concern is that I understand the reasons why they've done it, and again, the World Cup's going to be this time next year. In America, and it's a great test run. It's a great advert to see how it's perceived and how it will actually go. But I think the World Cup will be a spectacle anywhere it's played because it's the World Cup. So I don't really necessarily.
It's a different animal. The World Cup is definitely different.
It's like the Olympics, isn't it? It's really the Olympics of football. So I think it'll be a success wherever it's played. But my only concern was that when it comes to the players, and they're playing this tournament, and again we've got the preseason, which is historically and takes place in July, and then the season starts in August, particularly for the Premier League club. So my only concern is how much rest are these players, or recovery are these players going to get from playing in the Club World Cup, potentially going to a preseason. Again, it might be around the different parts around the world, and then going to start the season in August, and potentially having a very long season. And if you're an English club and you're progressing in the Champions League, you might be finishing your season in June because the Champions League finals recently have taken place in June. And then again, normally clubs before the World Cup or teams before the World Cup will have a warm-up game or a couple of warm-up games before they actually fly out to the tournament itself. Those take place usually in June. And then you're playing the World Cup in July, which could be 4 or 5 weeks. So how much rest are these players really going to get? And I just feel like personally,
well, you know, wait. Let's deal with the question you asked. Yeah, let's deal with the question.
No, I've got a few points.
You know what I mean? How much rest? I would say this: it costs to be the boss. You know what I mean? That's it. You know, like United ain't in the competition; they ain't got to worry about that. Arsenal ain't in the competition. There's only Manchester City and Chelsea that are in that competition. It costs to be the boss, you know. So and it takes a lot to actually make it. You know, you've got to have actually had good standing in the Champions League and have won it, and et cetera, to be a partaker of this. You know, the great Barcelona, you would have thought that they would have been in that, but they didn't make it. You know, so for me, I think you just got to charge it to the game. It just means you have to have a much bigger squad of players as well, which, you know, a lot of these teams do have the, you know, resources to be able to have that. So I think it's not as bad as it seems. You know, yes, players are playing a lot more.
But do you feel like the quality of the game will kind of, because of the kids are playing too much football, do you think the quality of the game suffers? Because I look at international football, we've got things like Nations Leagues and stuff. I don't feel like these tournaments I don't think they're necessary. I don't know what it brings to.
You know, it is. I think you're being a bit old school. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I'm one of those people who believe that football back when I was watching it growing up was better than it is now. 110%. That's why.
Yeah, no. I would say
very different now compared to what was 20 years ago.
It's changed a lot because if we're just talking football, you know, back in the day when we were all watching it, Mavericks had a very big place in football. You know, and you could see all of these creative players like Joe Cole, Rooney, etc., where they could just do like just amazing things on the pitch. And now it's become very systemized. So you don't see those type of players. So in some ways become less exciting. But in terms of, let's say, the Nations League, right, it's better than watching boring friendly matches where England plays, I don't know, Montenegro or some team like that they should be beating. So it's actually it's a glorified friendly, but it's in a format that where teams actually get to play better competition, better teams in that competition, and then there's something to win at the end of it. So for me, I do like it for that factor, that you get put up against real teams, real nations in that respect. But in terms of player
I
fatigue
feel
and
like,
things like that,
it's like in terms of also you mentioned it's a big tournament for clubs. It's almost a World Cup for clubs. But if the presentation, I know in the UK you've had to kind of be the Zone subscriber or it's shown on Channel 5.
right.
I believe that this summer as well, we've had the Women's Euros take place and also Wimbledon's taking place as well. So do you think that if it wasn't for those two tournaments, you feel like the presentation and the production for the Club World Cup would be the likes of Sky, BBC, ITV? Because if it's such a massive tournament and we should take it seriously, it should be perceived as that. Why is it not being broadcast on, all these major stations then? Why is it on DAZN?
Do you know what it is? It's because Sky's power in football and in sports is very weak at the moment. To be totally honest with you, football, I would say once that contract with that Sky have over the EPL ends, that's it. I don't think it gets renewed at Sky anymore. And the Zone are doing very well to start buying up licensing for all of these sports. Like they've pretty much sewn up boxing, and now they're looking heavy into football, and that's why they've got the Club World Cup. So I think within time, the Zone as a platform will become the all-encompassing platform for all things sport. And they're slowly inching their way into it. We've seen it with the likes of Amazon. There's a few games near the end of the year where they get broadcasted on Amazon. And personally, I think the Amazon production is far better than what's on Sky. I think that the Zone production is far better than what's on Sky. So I think
you've also got the TNT Sports, which is a home of the Champions League and the Europa League as well.
Right. That's right. And soon that would all be gone as well. And if you're looking at it from a fan's perspective, why do I need a subscription to TNT, Sky Sports, and maybe now the Zone? It's all a bit too much. That's like, and you don't even get to watch the 3:00 games on any of them. What's the point? But I think eventually we'll get to a place where, platform wise, there will be a home for football. It was Sky back in the day. If you remember, you had Sky Sports 1 through to 5, and you could watch a whole load of different games and everything was right there on Sky Sports Football. But things are changing. Everything is now app-based. Everything is now streamed to your device and things like that. And Sky, unfortunately, is the giant that thought it was too big to fail. But I think that is soon to be the case. But the Club World Cup, if we're looking at it, I want to just ask you: did you watch the semi-finals? Did you watch?
I saw the semi between Madrid and PSG. Again, like I said before, I've not watched many games. I've seen highlights of some of the games, but honestly, I've not paid too much attention to the games this summer, if I'm honest. But I did see the PSG Real Madrid game, and PSG were so dominant. I mean, you mentioned the Champions League final; they just carried on from that. The way they destroyed Inter Milan and the way that they destroyed Real Madrid. I think, listen, I know you're a Chelsea fan, but I feel like PSG at the moment are going to take some stopping in that final because Dembele's doing great. The midfielders they've got are fantastic. You're doing, really good player.
Yeah. It'll take a lot.
It'll take a lot to stop him. And again, Chelsea have had a good tournament, don't get me wrong, but I think this PSG team are probably now going to set. We mentioned the Barcelona teams from yesteryear. I think this PSG team are going to kind of set the benchmark now going forward in terms of next year in the Champions League, they're the team to beat. I feel like they're complete.
Look, they're the team to beat regardless. Yeah. I mean, with their dominance, so far, like the Peruvian supremacy is what I will call it at this time. It's very, very, very much in play. But what I would say is that although I do think PSG are the favourites for this Sunday's final, I would say that every final Chelsea has gone into, being the underdogs, being the team that nobody expects them to win, we find a way to win. We find a way to get it done. Bar the Conference League final, we was expected to win. So that's the only final we've gone into where they've expected us to win, and we've met that expectation. But otherwise, it's a one-off game. Anything can happen. Luck. The footballing gods could be smiling down. Sanchez in his goal, and for whatever reason, Dembele shooting boots and Doué shooting boots, Barcola shooting boots. Whoever else, it's just not coming into play as they thought it would, and we just need to be lucky for a good 90 minutes. And it's possible. It's not out of the realms of possibility. Botafogo managed to beat PSG in the Club World Cup. And even Arsenal in the Champions League when they won the group stages. If you remember correctly, during the group stages, PSG was one of the teams that might not have made it, which is crazy.
Yeah. That was due to the new format, wasn't it? The table league like.
That's
format.
right. So they've done well to go on and win that. And I'd just like to say, isn't it amazing that they've gotten rid of the so-called Galacticos in Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe, and they've just gone in and brought in Dembele, and look at what's taken place. Amazing. Goes to show, when you have the right characters in the team that buy into the coach's vision, that buy into, the tactics and the systems, and more importantly, they're willing to work hard for one another, it goes a long way to show that this is what's possible and this is what you can achieve. So yeah, we're looking forward to Sunday, as the Chelsea fan, definitely looking forward to it. It's not out of the realms of possibility. It's more unlikely than likely, but we're there now. Why not win it?
Yeah, I agree. But I think one thing I'll say before we move on to the next subject is, listen, Chelsea, when they get to European finals, they don't lose many European finals. So that's what I'll say. They're very difficult to beat. As you mentioned, it's a one-off game, and historically, Chelsea have always somehow gotten over the line. And I think that it makes for a fascinating game on Sunday because, again, I think PSG have got very good options. You spoke about Ramos. Ramos comes off the bench, always scores when he comes off the bench, always contributes. They've got Enrique, a very good manager, tactically very good coach. You mentioned get rid of all the superstars in the team and building this core of young players, hungry players who want to kind of work hard and succeed. That's all down to Enrique. So I think it makes for a really good game on Sunday. If I was a betting person, I'd say PSG would win it. But again, anything can happen in football, so I'm looking forward to that.
Anything can happen. And if you was a true betting man, you would want better odds. So you would bet Chelsea.
We'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. But listen, Flex, other than the Club World Cup, it's been quite busy in the transfer market this summer. We've seen Liverpool in particular making a lot of moves in the transfer market, signing the likes of Welts from Bayer Leverkusen, Frimpong as well, and the likes of Arsenal being heavily linked to Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. Also, I think your club Chelsea have signed João Pedro as well.
Yeah. Speaking of João Pedro, did you see those 2 goals he scored? Against...
I haven't, but I heard that he was very, very good in that game. To be very, very good.
You need to go check it out.
At Brighton, I've always liked João Pedro, and I feel like Chelsea have always, likes of Jackson up front, you've always kind of questioned, can he be the guy to kind of take Chelsea to that next level? And I think with João Pedro there now, giving them extra options in the attacking areas, I feel like he could have been. I don't know. Are Chelsea favourites to win the league next season? I don't think so. But by bringing in João Pedro, I feel like they've increased the chances, especially attacking wise. They've brought in some new tools in there, and I think he's a very, very good player to kind of bring into Chelsea's team. So,
absolutely.
Chelsea have done really well so far in the transfer market. Liverpool have made huge moves in the transfer market. Man City started early as well, got in some players. Yeah. Man United are still, trying to figure out.
Lagging behind.
Well, listen, they've got Cunha. I think Cunha's an upgrade on a lot of the players in the midfield areas I think that they've got so far. I think Mbeumo, if he does come into the team, it shows that Amorim's looking at proven Premier League players who know the league, and who won't take time to kind of adjust to the Premier League. I think in the last couple of seasons, we've brought in players who haven't played in the Premier League and have found it difficult to adjust, the likes of Anthony, the likes of Rasmus Højlund as well. But I feel like by him going for Mbeumo potentially coming in, and also Cunha, he's going for players who won't need time to adapt and could potentially fit into a system he wants to play.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. But I mean, our guy, Mohamed Kudus, going to Tottenham. What did you make of that
massive.
transfer? Were you surprised by that transfer?
Hey, not surprised. Not surprised. It's a solid move for himself. You know, it's back in the Champions League for him as well. You know, which is good. So it's a great career choice. You know, it's an upgrade to West Ham in every way you can think of, and it's a good manager that they've got there. You know, they've also, now I'm hearing Gibbs White is also, you know, signing as well. 60 million.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about the issue with Gibbs White transfer. As at time of recording, there's been issues. You know, Nottingham Forest are apparently accusing Tottenham of approaching a player without consent and effectively tapping up the player. So that's going to be interesting to see how.
Do you know what this is, right? Because I asked this question to a friend earlier as well, because I've noticed that in football, it's been that you're allowed to speak to the player and agree a contract before you go to the club.
Yeah,
but I always thought that you go to the club before you can go to the player. So I don't know where this has actually happened, you know. So
you know, it's the power of agents now, though. Football agents now have had a lot of power where, you know, they're doing deals on the side, and players are effectively talking to clubs without actually formally, or the clubs formally come together to agree a transfer fee in the first place. But the thing that kind of confused me was that I think Tottenham had triggered the release clause in his contract, which is £60 million. So I'm unsure if you've triggered the release clause in his contract, how have you then illegally approached the player? That was what kind of confused me.
Well, because you've done it in the reverse order. You've already got the contract agreed, so that's technically tapping up, and now you've got to trigger the release clause. I think it's all handbags. I think at the end of the day, it will get done because the player's not going to want to stay at Forest anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we nipped in the bud, you know, quite sharpish, you know. But again, for the both of them, it's a solid move. I wonder how Tottenham are going to play with Maddison, Gibbs White, you know, how that works, because they both want to be the playmakers for the team. Like everything needs to go through them. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, who Thomas Frank favors in that, you know, in that particular role. You know, we know Kudus, you know, is going to play out on the right, you know, cut in, you know, on the left. If Son is still there, Sonny will be there on the left-hand side, and you know they still need to get a striker. And I hear
they've still got they've got Ben Johnson as well. So Brennan Johnson. They've got Kulusevski.
Brennan Johnson's there. Kulusevski is still there. You know, it's a decent-looking team. It's a team that's going to fly under the radar. You know, I think they're going to go about their business very quietly, and you know, before we know it, be like, oh snap, Tottenham are in the top 5. Like, you know, that's you know, we need to watch out for those guys. You know, I think it's going to be one of those. You know, but. Our enemies, you know, you can see that they've been struggling.
Yeah, I think Tottenham will be interesting because Thomas Frank going to Tottenham now. I feel like, do you know, Brentford, I always enjoyed watching Brentford because I always thought they're very direct. The likes of Wissa and Bromo, they didn't have a lot of the ball, but when they attacked with purpose. And then Bromo in particular, you look at his conversion rate. It was a good conversion rate. You know, he wasn't one of those players who needed many chances to score. So I feel like Thomas Frank could build something very good at Tottenham. Again, it remains to be seen. But one player I want to talk to you about, and I think you've probably got a lot of interest in this, is Noni Madueke going to Arsenal.
This was what I was about to say, because this was what I was about to say, our enemies. Yeah. I wasn't talking about Tottenham being an enemy. Because Tottenham, to me, they're not even, you know, they say rivalry, but how can it be a rivalry when, I mean, what have they really won against us that, you know, what have they won that we haven't won? You know, how many times have we beat them? You know what I mean? Like, that's not really a rivalry. That's just like big bro slapping little bro. That's just what that is. You know what I mean? But in terms of, you know, when I say enemies, where that's something that, you know, an enemy we both share, you know, and that's awesome. You know, and even then I would say, are they really even rivals? You know, they're not really, you know, but we do good business with them. You know, we do.
I don't know why. What is the link between you? Listen, Trek went from Chelsea to Arsenal. David Luiz.
I can tell you the link. I can tell you what that is already. That is American ownership. That's the link. You know, that is just Americans looking after Americans doing business that to the fan makes no sense, but to them makes a world of sense. You know, these guys, you know, they're multinationals. They have businesses that link in different ways. And this could be a move that pretty much scratches one person's back with another scratch happening in a realm that we're not familiar with somewhere else. Do you see what I mean? So I think that's what a lot of that kind of stuff is, and that's what it's been
I
over
don't know.
the years.
I feel like what player has gone from Chelsea to Arsenal has been a success? I can't. People might say Havertz, but I don't think I think Havertz has struggled at times at
No,
Arsenal.
they had a massive debate about that on the
Yeah,
radio
yeah,
yesterday, and this was Rory Jennings. He's one of the Chelsea as well, and he was making the point that Havertz has not been a success at Arsenal. But Arsenal fans phoning in to say that he has been a success. For me, I can't see how he's been a success from when he's not a striker, right? So that's one thing. B, when he plays in his so-called best position, he's not the best in his best position. So I can't see how he could be a success. So there's so many factors around that guy. Even at Chelsea, I would say he wasn't even a success. That's why he was sold. So it's a bit of an odd one. Will Madueke do well at Arsenal? I think he'll do okay. I can't see him doing any worse than what he's done at Chelsea.
But you're surprised though, because I think Madueke last season for Chelsea is one of their better players at most
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't
Really?
say he was one of our better players. No. What, he had a great game against Wolves? Okay.
So you're not surprised.
Okay.
So you're not surprised that
No,
Arsenal paid
definitely
£50
not.
million for Madueke.
Look, I'm not surprised that he's leaving, but I am surprised that he's leaving to Arsenal. Because for me, it's like Arsenal need to be focusing on securing their number 9. Then they need to focus on improving their left wing. They don't have a problem out on the right side because if Saka is not available, Nwaneri is available.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a bit odd to get someone who will play out on the right wing and say that it's a replacement for Saka when Saka should already have a replacement in Nwaneri and then pay north of £50 million for, which is a bit odd. It's very odd, very confusing. Makes no sense to us, but we'll see. That's the beauty about this.
I feel like if Arsenal get Gyökeres, I feel like they'll overlook all this stuff because for the last couple of seasons, number 9, that's what they've been seeking for. I'm not sure why they've not gone for the number 9. But
do you know what the problem is? The problem is not that Madueke has gone to Arsenal. The problem is the order it's happened in. Now, if they had signed Gyökeres and that transfer was in the bag, right, then the Madueke signing would have somewhat flown under the radar. There wouldn't be such backlash because right now they're looking at it as, wait, we signed this guy for 50 odd million when we need to get a 9. Like that money could have gone to securing, Gyökeres. And I'm hearing they're squabbling over £4 million. But you're going to drop north of 50 million.
Well, it's not surprising. Listen, they didn't pay. They paid a pound for what Suarez. I mean, try to get Suarez.
Yeah, 50 million in a pound.
Yes, we're not surprised by that. To be fair, we're not surprised, man.
So it's typical Arsenal behavior. But look, I'm not surprised because at the end of the day, they're dealing with a manager that thinks that he can win the league without a striker. To be totally honest, so I wouldn't be surprised if the transfer window closes and they have Mitrovic up front.
Which is unlikely, isn't it? That's not going to happen. To be fair, up front. That's not.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is the type of manager we're dealing with, right? Because if you're telling me Rodrigo has been told by Real Madrid that he can leave, why is that not on the top of your list?
Yeah,
you need to improve your left.
It's strange. You're right. Arsenal's activity has been very strange. To be honest. It's been like that for a couple of seasons. I think they signed Sterling last season
They signed Sterling on loan.
A lot of their activity doesn't come across as if they've got their targets. We're going to go all out to get our target. Look at Liverpool; they've done their business early, made the point, made an impact. Good to go. I feel like Arsenal, they know what they need, but for some reason they can't seem to. Again, you mentioned Rodrigo being available this summer, and if for some reason the priority is to get Madueke to come in. And again, this Gyökeres transfer, I know he's made a point that he wants to leave. He's not turned up for training at Sporting Lisbon. He wants to make the move, but Arsenal have not agreed a fee yet. Apparently, he's spoken to the club and they've agreed a contract with him, but the clubs have not come together to agree a fee yet. So that to me is baffling. I don't see. I think this could go on until the last of the transfer window. I don't think Arsenal will get.
You know what?
The players
they'll get him. I think they'll get him.
It will roll on though. I don't think it will be.
No, it'll roll on, and you know what? For Arsenal, it's not such a bad thing because the longer it goes, then the closer it comes down to the price that you wanted to pay because they know they can't keep a player that's not happy. Do you see what I mean? So he will be sold. It just comes down to when and how much does it affect your preseason. Because you want to have, the core of your team out at preseason. You don't want, bits of the core, coming in nearer the end, right at the beginning of the season, and then now you're trying to sew things together. We all know that the competition for next season is going to be quite high because everyone, minded, like Liverpool has strengthened like crazy, as you mentioned at the top of the show. City have strengthened as well. Chelsea have strengthened. Tottenham have strengthened. Villa, they're trying to work things out. Newcastle have bought Elanga. They're trying to work things out. So like all of these clubs, notice how I didn't say United, have all kind of gone in a direction where
they'll be the top 10. Don't worry, we'll be the top
10. So we will see. I think it's going to be a good run, and I think we're going to see a lot of big performances from players because it's the World Cup season. Players are going to put on a show, but at the same time, they're going to do it with caution because they want to make it to the World Cup. So it's going to be intriguing. This is usually the time where Rashford comes alive, but I'm hearing he's on his way to Barcelona. So we'll see.
It's true. I think he's been very vocal about. Listen, I think with United's outgoings, in particular, I think the players that have been told they can leave, the likes of Garnacho, Anthony, Sancho, and Rashford. I'll probably say, apart from Anthony, I feel like a lot of the other players have kind of dug their own grave in a way because Rashford, I think he's one who came out last December and said that he's ready for a new challenge. Nobody told him to come out and say that. And I remember at the time thinking it was quite a strange move for a player who's not really playing very well at the moment. But yet he's come out in the media and he said that he's ready for a new challenge. Yeah. I don't understand how he thought that would be perceived well by the fan base and also the media. The likes of Garnacho, he's been very vocal. His brother's been very vocal on social media, playing games, saying that he's not happy with the manager, this, that, and the other. Sancho's obviously had his issues with Ten Hag, and for some reason, he's not been able to fit at United and also going to Chelsea. Did okay at Chelsea for a bit, but again, they sent him back, paying £5 million in addition to that as well. So I think the outgoings at United are very important this summer, and I think if Amorim, he needs to make a strong start. And again, it goes back to my point about bringing in players who are Premier League proven, who won't need time to adapt to the league, because we've brought players in for the last couple of seasons who found it tricky to adapt to the Premier League. But I thought the likes of him and Bromo, who if he does come in, and Cunha would be very good. It would be a very good start to what he's trying to build at the football club. But I think outgoing wise, I think I think Amorim's made the right decision, to be honest. I feel like we've been crying out for somebody who can take control of the football club, make decisions, make a statement. He knows what he wants to do.
These decisions have been made for him. Let's not get it confused. He's not making these decisions. These players have come out to say, we are playing for you.
Yeah.
So what else can you do?
Yeah. I agree. I agree. But a lot of these players were making these comments. Well, Garnacho's played a lot under Amorim, to be fair. I think Rashford's, he's obviously suffered from a lack of form for a couple of years now. But I think Anthony went out on loan. I think that was good for him to go to Betis. He's done really well there. Yeah. But I feel like Amorim, yes, the players have come out and said they want to leave. That's because they know they've not got a future there. Because he made it clear they've not got a future there. So they had to have a solution. I think for the club, it's best if they do move on. I think United just need a clean slate. I think the Europa League final was a big eye-opener. The performance in that final was just not, I don't know what to say, to be honest. It just wasn't great. But it's time for a clean slate. I think Amorim, if he's given control of the football club, if he is backed how he should be backed, I feel like there's a chance he could do well, because the club knew what they were getting when they brought him in. They knew his philosophy.
I would say this, right? When you talk about being backed, I'm hearing they're squabbling over a couple of million for Mbeumo. No. Is that called being backed? I don't know.
Well, no, but I said if he is backed with what he should be, how he should be backed, I feel like if he gets a place he needs to get into the club, there could be a chance it could change. But United, again, you look at the decisions they've made in the last couple of years. Eric Ten Hag was given a new contract, he was sacked. Dan Ashworth, the sporting director, he was sacked, after being brought in to help. So United have effectively paid off two people millions of pounds who probably Ten Hag shouldn't have been there in the first place. And Dan Ashworth, I'm not sure what happened there, what happened to make him lose his job. But United have paid a lot of money to people who, again, bad decisions, so they're not in a position where they have a lot to spend. I feel like it's very important who leaves the club as opposed to who comes in. I can't see a lot of activity happening. I feel like players will come in, but it won't be what the fans want. I feel like it'd be a steady build, a steady transition. I'm not expecting 4 or 5 players this summer. I feel like we'll have to kind of make do with some of the players, whilst the players who need to leave leave. So he could bring in some money. Hopefully they'll cooperate with it. Hopefully Rashford will lower his wage demand. He'll be able to leave. Garnacho the same. We'll get a fee for him.
Nah, if I'm Rashford, I'm not lowering absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
He doesn't have to lower his wage demand, but we have to be realistic as well. Who's going to come in for you? Who's going to pay what you want them to pay for you?
Hey mate, then I'll just take my money in it. I'll sit right here. That's
fine. Players can do that. Players recently have had the attitude of, okay, I'm on a contract, I don't have to leave, and that's true. Legally, they're on a contract, but your career will suffer in the long term. You're not going to play football.
That's okay. That's okay. This is a guy who's seen it all. He's played in the World Cup. It doesn't matter. He's played in the World Cup.
How old is he? 27, 28? He's still in his prime. He's still got a couple of years ahead. I'm sure he doesn't want to sit there and pick up money and not do anything, to be honest.
Yeah, you can't buy food with, getting knocked out at the World Cup.
The guy's got millions of pounds. He's got millions of pounds.
It doesn't matter. You can always have more. You can always have more. You know what I mean?
That's fine. Footballers have that attitude. I get it. Sancho the same. He was still his contract. He's willing to do that. But I just feel as if, listen, your contract, your career will suffer as a result of it. Your reputation will suffer as a result.
Why'd you go to work? Why'd you go to work, Rich? Why'd you go?
I know, but we're in a different world.
No, it's the same, bro. It's the same. It's work to these lot.
We're not getting paid the wages. We're not getting paid the wages.
It's the same. You say that, but when you actually get there, and you're in that environment, you will see it as work. It is work, because guess what? When they tell you to be somewhere, guess what? You have to be there, even though you don't want to be there. It's work, So if my contract is 300 grand a week and you want me to leave, and the other club is willing to pay half of that, that's fine. Pay the other half. At least that's half of my wage bill off your accounting sheet for the remaining 2 years. So I don't feel like any of those players need to reduce their, earnings or whatever, short themselves because I want to play at the World Cup, or because No, they've done those things already. So for them, they need to look after their families and future-proof themselves.
No, again, that's
it's a job. Yeah, it's a job.
It's a job. Flexx, it's a job, but it's also a short career, isn't it? It's a short career.
It's a short career, but they've done that already. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. They've done it already. So it's not like they're going to experience something new. It's not like England's going to win the World Cup, is it?
So, we hope they will. Tuchel in charge, hopefully.
Nah, it's not going to happen, mate. 3-1.
Listen, that's another episode. That's another episode, man. That's another episode. That's another episode there. But listen, like I said before, the transfer window has been very exciting so far, guys, and I'd love to get your comments on who's made the best business so far. I'm sure there's still a month or two to go, so I'm sure we'll still see some more outgoings and incomings at various football clubs. So looking forward to see that. But Flexx, I mean, it's been good. It's been good to talk to you today about these topics. Listen, if Chelsea win the Club World Cup, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Two more sleeps. Yeah, I mean, and we'll see where we are. Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's been a pleasure. Like as Richard said, like, share, subscribe, to the content. We're gonna do our best to get out to you guys weekly. With all sorts of content. It's the Athletes Hub. It's not the Football Hub. It's the Athletes Hub.
That's it.
All things sports. All things sports.
Great stuff. Flexx, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
As always, my friend. See you soon.
You too.